everybody. Sorry I'm a couple minutes late. We were having some issues with a problem with the broadcasting, so hopefully that is not going to be a continuing issue. Just want to welcome everybody here. For those of you that don't know me, I am Chris Branley. I absolutely love painting. I painted pretty much all my life. I probably started falling in love with it when I was in 8th grade. I had a really awesome art teacher, and I ended up getting an art degree in art education and taught art. I actually started teaching in the public school in '91 and did that for a long time, and then worked on professional murals around the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And now I'm a full-time professional artist. I paint and I teach overseas on retreats in Italy and France and all over the United States, and I absolutely love it. I'm doing some online courses now. Currently, my Unlocking Color Secrets online course is open and available to register. And the first month we are offering for free, so you can get in and kind of see what it's like. But today I am just going to paint a little bit with you. It's just going to be a casual hangout. I'd love for you guys to ask me any questions that you might have along the way, and I'll do my best to answer those and just show you the process and kind of what goes on in my head, which could be scary, but we'll see. So without further ado, let me go ahead and put the phone over here so you can see the painting and what I'm working on. So I started this a little bit earlier today, and I'm doing a painting of this old door in the middle of a stone wall in a little village called Rocamadour in South France. And it's a city that's actually built into the side of a cliff. It's really awesome, and it was one of the excursions we went on a trip to France a few years ago. And what I love about this photograph, and what I'm kind of wanting to capture, is the way the lighting is. Obviously the door is important, but I want to capture that lighting, and then also I wanted to add some pops of color. And so we're going to add some flowers along the vines there and kind of pull the eye in and direct it into the composition, just to make it a little bit more interesting. So I am going to try to pay attention here. I've got my computer up, so it'll be easier for me to see comments. Looking, here we go, okay. Hi Ann, I'm so glad you're here. She's from Shreveport. Cindy, Carolyn, great to see you here from Georgia. And we've got people here in North Texas as well. We have been having torrential rains today and thunder, so I was really hoping our power didn't go out. It seems to have calmed a little bit, so keeping our fingers crossed. So if you hear some rumbling, that's what's happening. I love it, but I just don't want the power to go out. And it's calm, the calm kind, like we're not under a tornado warning or anything, so that's always good. All right, so I have started off here putting my underpainting on, and I went ahead and just did that ahead of time to save us some time because I've only got an hour. I'm working on a 16 by 16 ampersand gesso board. And what I've done is just gone in and laid in a bunch of transparent color. And I did not use colors that you see in the picture necessarily, because what I'm wanting to do is place colors that whenever I put my next layer on, those colors underneath will support that top layer, and I'll allow little bits and pieces of the other colors to peek through. So it just makes it kind of fun and vibrant and interesting. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with some of my important elements here. I'm going to go with my little bit smaller brush. So this is a 28 No, sorry, I can't see. Size 20, flat, Royal and Sable Tech long nickel. So I'm coming in over the tops of these flowers, and I'm just gonna come in with some lighter shades of pinks. And what I'm doing now is working opaque color on top of my transparent layer. So I want these nice bright flowers to really pop. And so at first, they're not going to really stand out because we haven't done much with the surrounding colors. So what you have to do is allow colors to kind of work with each other and support each other, and that's what creates the intensity and the lighting. So for example, if I really want this lighting to pop, what I'm going to want to make sure I do is make sure my surrounding colors are darker and then complementary. So on the color wheel, the complementary color of yellow is purple, so I have pops of purple up against that, and that'll make it even brighter. All right, so I'm just going to come back in here and do different values, lights and darks of these pinks. So I'm just mixing up a lighter value. Thinking about the lighting. So it's coming in through this way. So we're going to have little pops of lighter values more towards the right side. And I'm just working back and forth with different pink tones that I have. And I'm mixing my transparent pinks with my white to make it opaque. So now I'm going with a little bit cooler pink. And I'm just kind of working my way around. And I like to do little bits and pieces and just build it up a little bit at a time and try to work throughout the whole board and bring everything up together. Hey Patrick, it's good to see you, and Jan, and Lisa. Oh, Lisa says she's having a beautiful day in Ohio. That's awesome. We have been having so much rain lately, which is crazy. And Dana, good to see you from California. All right, so now I'm going with my bigger brush. So this is my 28. And I'm going to start laying in some of these bigger spaces here. I like to kind of cover some of the acreage quickly. So I'm going to mix up some different values of stony gray tones. And I'm going to start with kind of a mid-tone, and then I'll work in my highlights and my shadows. So I like to spend time mixing my colors really thoroughly. If I don't mix them really thoroughly, then you start getting streaks and things in your painting and unwanted colors. So what I'm doing here is just laying in kind of a light touch. I'm not putting my thickest colors in yet. And I'm just working these grays in, but allowing some of those background colors to show through. Plus, I know I'm going to come back in later with some highlights, so I don't want to cover the whole thing yet. So I'm skipping around because these stones are different colors, and I'm kind of overlapping some of this grout that I've already laid in. So that was something I did early on, was I made sure that my values were established really early, those darkest values. So I'm looking for all those dark little areas of grout. And I was kind of, I didn't want to put too many of those in because it can get kind of busy quickly. All right, just mixing up some more stony colors. And I like for those temperatures and colors and values to kind of change as I go along. That's why I kind of skip around. So it's just kind of like putting a puzzle together. It's just a little bits at a time. Changing those brush strokes up, making it look really impressionistic. So I'm allowing spaces to still apply highlights and temperature shifts. So notice we went a little warmer and lighter on that value, on that stony color. I don't know if y'all can hear, but that thunder is still rumbling. All right, so as I'm working this side, I'm wanting to take some of the same colors and bring them over here so that it looks consistent. Okay, and I'm not using a little teeny tiny brush. I'm wanting to make sure I'm getting some good coverage. And I'm saving all my details for later. So right now, I started with that first layer and I just got in those general shapes. And as I work and start building, then towards the end, we'll start thinking more about detailing. And I can hear Tibby, my dog, she's crying because I have the door closed. So anything can happen in these live videos. You never know. So just kind of working throughout all of this background stony color. And it's kind of nice to get that large acreage covered, like I said. It kind of helps the painting start to come together a little bit more quickly because it does take a while to build all of these layers and details. You don't come in and just slap it on there and magically have it happen, unfortunately. Okay, I'm going to go a little warmer on the stone now. So it's got a little bit more of an orangey tone. And just allowing the brush to kind of skip around a little bit. And I'm not really at this point paying a whole lot of attention exactly to the picture, to those exact colors. That is the beauty of impressionistic painting, is because whenever I'm looking at my photo, I'm using it as a reference, but I don't have to rely on it to make it look exactly like the photograph. It's just a reference. So it gives me more freedom to kind of play around and not be so tied down to exactly what the picture looks like. Okay, we'll do a little bit more stone. I haven't done highlights on the stone yet. But what I'm going to do is put a few more stony areas in, and then we're going to move to another section of the painting. Kind of want to work around these florals here. And I'm overlapping again some of the grout because I want that to look like the stone is actually coming up over the grout, like it's three-dimensional, pushing that grout back. Those darker colors are going to recede a little bit. Gonna look over and check every once in a while and see what you guys are saying. You guys have thunder, Laura. Hey, Laura. Laura and I went to high school together in Korea. I was a military brat. And Abigail from Virginia, hello. Thank you so much for joining in. All right, we're gonna come back to the stone. We've got this dimensional area here, but again, I want to move around. So I'm going to go ahead and clean my brush off really good. It's important to keep everything clean from your solvent. So what I do is I wipe my paint out first, and then I rinse the brush out, and then I wipe the brush out again, and I try to keep my palette clean and not touch colors that are next to each other. All right, let's go ahead and jump over to the door and start putting in some of those pretty blues. So I laid in just a general shadowing, and what we're gonna do is mix up kind of a teal, lighter teal blue. Hey, Donnie says it's raining in Valley Ranch. Are you guys in North Texas? I know you've got Canton. Valley Ranch, is that close to Frisco? Is that where the Dallas Cowboys play? I don't know. Okay, let me pop a little bit more green in this. I've got kind of a blue tone. I'm gonna start with this, and we're not gonna commit to it completely, but I'm just gonna start laying in some really light strokes. And I'm gonna, again, move around because I want to create different values, different lights and darks, and temperature shifts and changes. Don't want to get my paint too thick just yet. I'm leaving some space there for a shadow underneath the little latch there. Okay, I'm going to mix up another color that's very similar to that one, just so we can have some changes in here. So we've got kind of a greenish tone going, and now I'm going a little cooler and putting in a little bit more blue tone. Still trying to work to leave some of that pretty magenta showing from underneath, because that's where the magic happens. You can leave those little spots of color, creates a nice little sparkle. And again, I'm just moving and keeping my brush strokes very loose. And towards the end, I'll come back and refine just a little bit. I don't want to refine too much because I like to keep it fresh and impressionistic looking. But sometimes it can get a little wild and crazy too. And so I kind of come back in and kind of tone things down a little bit. This is darker back in here. So I'm just allowing that to kind of mix into that wet paint. Shifting that temperature again a little bit more. And just popping it in here and there, letting that light kind of bounce around. And I'll come back with a little bit smaller brush in here later and refine that because we want to go around this hardware. But again, all of that refining I kind of save until last. Right now I'm just getting some colors down. Changing up my brush strokes. All right, it's not finished, but we're going to move down to this darker portion of the door. Kathy is in North Carolina, says it's pretty there. That's awesome. And is asking, why did I choose pink and purples for my undertones on the door? Okay, good question, Anne. So I try to think about whenever I'm painting my undertones. I try to think about colors that are not going to be too close to what that final color is going to be, because if it's too similar, then it's not going to pop. And so usually what I'll do is a different temperature. Okay, so for example, the door is kind of a light blue, gray, green tones. And so I want to do something that maybe is a warmer temperature. So I know that these magentas behind it are warmer and that that's going to support those other colors. So usually I'll go with a darker color and different temperature. All right, coming down, I'm going to mix up some of the color for this lower portion of the door. I want to have similar colors, but it's going to go darker. And I'm going to start by adding in some of this blue. So it goes a little more blue, but we may have to gray this up a little bit. I'm just going to test it and see, because sometimes it's really hard to see what the color is going to look like on the palette until you get it up next to all these other colors. So I think this is okay for portions. I don't want to do this everywhere, so I'm just going to kind of lay in a little bit of this blue here and there. Want it to look real rustic, so keeping those brush strokes nice and loose. Okay, I'm going to build on that. And so I'm going to mix in kind of some gray tones. And also, if I want to neutralize my blue, what I can do is add the opposite color on the color wheel. So I know that orange is the opposite color of blue on the color wheel. So I'm picking up my transparent orange, not my opaque orange. And that's graying that down a bit. And I'm going to pull in a little bit more of that turquoisey color as well. So this will give me a nice color to play off of this other blue that we've already laid down. Again, just working different brush strokes, allowing some of those colors to blend that are underneath. Again, we're still keeping it really loose at this point. That's a nice neutral gray, but I still want to have some pops of color on top of that. So let me go ahead and finish kind of filling some of this in. And we're going to build on that. That's why I don't like to go too thick too soon, because if I started off putting some really thick strokes on here, it's harder to lay more layers on top. So I saved my thickest paint for last. Just going to come in and kind of define this around here a little bit better. It's a little fleur-de-lis on the hardware. All right, now we're going to go with more of a kind of bluish turquoise color, not quite as neutral. Okay, let's see. I think it needs to go a little bluer. Going to work nicely. So I'm coming right up to the edge of that shadow. Just doing a few strokes at a time and then cleaning my brush and reloading. If I were to just continue mix, mix, mix and stroke, 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 it tends to muddy things up and then it's going to make your painting so it's not quite as vibrant. Okay, so again, I'm not covering up everything that we did, but I am just adding these little highlights and colors that are a little bit pure, more pure, purer, that's kind of hard to say, more pure. Kind of moving around because this paint has worn, it's chipping, the light is bouncing around, so it's causing different values. So there's all kinds of factors. So you want to make sure you're moving around and not doing the same boring color and stroke every time. Okay, and then what I can do here, so when I'm cleaning my brush out and then I'm drying it off, so it's nice and clean and nice and dry. And I'm going to take those edges and soften, and so that'll kind of refine that a little bit and make it look a little bit more like it's just a gradual shift in shadow. Softening that up a little bit. Okay, and again, the door is not finished, but I'm going to move to another section of the painting. And while I've got some blue tones, we're going to put in, where this yellow is, we're going to put in some sky colors. So I'm just mixing up a little bit. We're going to test it and see if it's the value that I'm wanting. I think it's okay. I might need to go a little lighter, but I can always come back in and lay in some lighter values on top of that. Let's see, this is the front of the stone beam. So I don't want to cover that yet. Just putting little peaks of sky, little sky holes in between this vine foliage that's up here above the wall. Hey, and the other thing I really want to capture, and a lot of times I'll save my highlights for the very last, but since this here is such an important feature with that light coming through, we're going to go ahead and lay that in. So I'm going to go with a lighter value than the yellow. So mixing up a really light stony color. And I'm going to test this. So I think that works for now. I can always pop a lighter color on top of that if I need to later. But I'm just kind of laying those strokes in and leaving them. That's my motto, lay it and leave it. Even if you feel like it doesn't look right at first, once you start building up the rest of your painting, it may very well work with everything else. If not, you can always come back and refine it. Okay, if you do too much and overwork it, then it's going to start to get muddy and you're going to kind of lose that spontaneity. So I can see there's little pops of light up in here. And I'm not sure I want to go with the same color here. It's a little darker than the stone and a little warmer. Just looking to see where else I can pop this color in. I think we're going to take it, since this is facing right, this is also facing right. So that's the same value. So we're going to pop that in there. And then we're going to warm it up, go a little more orangey. Okay, so we're starting to get a little darker as we come down. Need to darken that a little bit more. And those of you that take my online course, I spend a lot of time really explaining all of my colors. You have a really close-up shot of the palette, so you'll see exactly how I'm mixing everything. You'll have a close-up, almost straight on, of the painting, so you'll see all the strokes. And I talk through my process, my brush strokes, very thorough. So it doesn't cost anything to try it out for that first month. Love to have you. Just chrisbrandley.com. You'll see it on the little button on the front page, so it'll take you right there. So I'm being real careful not to cover too much of that underpainting quite yet. And this, I kind of warmed that up even more than what I did here. So I'm coming over here, I'm going to pop some of that in as well. Going to get some variation in the temperature there. Little dappled light. And I'm going to go ahead and carry some of that color down below as well. And I may or may not, like in the photograph, this is all dirt. So I don't know, we may put grass down there. Use our artistic license, we'll figure it out. So a lot of times I make those decisions towards the end. So just think about it there. All right, so using the same color tones, we're gonna come up here. I love the glow of the lighting coming through and hitting the top of the stone there from underneath. The way to really make that pop is to have cooler colors against the warm and purples against this yellowy orangey color. So not wanting to lose all of that, I'm going to actually let some of that peek through, but I'm going to take a little bit of the stony color, and I'm looking at this corner up here. It's actually almost the same as what we've got going on down here. So I need to remix some of that color. Got some blues and some grays. I've got this nice warm gray by Rembrandt, and I just go in and kind of change it up by adding blues to it to cool it, or oranges to warm it up. So I'm going to make it a little cooler so it'll stand out against this warm, glowy color. And I'm using just the corner of the brush. So even though I've got this big brush, I can move it around and manipulate by just using portions of the brush and still be able to use the wide bristle brush. So you don't need to have a teeny tiny brush. That's going to force you to get in and really focus on detail, which if you're wanting to paint impressionistically, you don't want to get in there and spend so much time on your detail. So I really urge you to work with larger brushes, especially on a larger surface like this. All right, let's go ahead and do some of the vine. So we're gonna jump in and get some of this greenery. Donnie's asking, will the live stream be available for another viewing? Yes, I'm going to save it. So unless something goes terribly wrong, it will be on my Facebook page and on my YouTube page, Chris Brandley Art. And I've got lots of other videos on there too if you want to check those out. Kathy says, wonderful class, love it. Thank you so much, Kathy. And Anne, thank you. You are so welcome. So glad you guys are here. I really appreciate you being here. I'd love if you guys would share the video. It really helps me out. All right, just mixing up some green tones, going with kind of a mid-tone neutral to start with. So that is going to give me something to build on. I'm looking at your view here to see if you guys have a glare. I'm having a little bit of a glare, so I think I'm going to move around here so I can actually see what I'm doing. So I am just working in some different types of strokes, not doing the same brush stroke every time, knowing that I'm going to be building on top of this. Now, as I come into this gray stony color, I've picked it up on my brush. So if I were to continue working, it's going to muddy up all my greens. So I'm going to go ahead and what I do is I just wipe that out. Can you all see that? Just wipe it out, reload. Nice pure color. It's so important to take the time it takes so that in the end it takes less time. So take the time to clean in between. Make sure you're not picking at, if you're wanting pure color, you don't want to be picking at like a muddy stony color that might be next to your green, getting it in your brush, which is going to create havoc later. Break these flowers up just a little bit, have some of those greens overlapping. Thinking about how that vine just kind of cascades down. So I'm starting with greens that are a little bit darker, and then I'm going to build on those. And we'll put those highlights in last, and that's what really makes the painting. Again, I came over some of that gray, so I'm just going to turn my brush because I just used one corner. So now I'm going to use the other corner that's still clean and kind of start working those greens in until I pick up opaque color again, stop and clean. Kind of working my way in between some of these little sky holes. And as I do the vines, I'm also thinking about the shapes. So I'm not necessarily paying attention to exactly what it looks like in the photograph. I do like how there's some of this greenery kind of growing out of these cracks here. But what I had decided to do is balance this side off by just making it a vine that's coming down a little bit lower. That just makes the composition more interesting if you have different levels. So if I were to take this all the way down to the same level as this, it wouldn't be as interesting as keeping it a little higher up. So the size is, Celeste, is 16 by 16. And it's on a cradled ampersand gesso board. And if y'all will remind me at the end, I'll show you what I do with my edges. I have like a little decorative thingy that I do on my edges. All right, we're gonna build up some of the highlights on the greenery. So I'm gonna go quite a bit lighter. Not going with my lightest highlight, but I am gonna go quite a bit lighter just to kind of start popping some light into these little vines and leaves. And again, I'm just kind of using the photo as a reference right now. I'm not even paying too much attention to exactly what's going on in the painting or in the photograph. Just kind of going with my gut and knowing that I need to create balance and I need to create value shifts, darks and lights. having a lot of that contrast and variety just makes for a really interesting painting. I'm also wanting to have that light come in here and really light up. You see on this where that little sparkle is? So I'm trying not to get too many midtones. I want the greens to stay dark so that when I come in and pop in those highlights, it'll really show up nicely. Trying to change my brush and create different strokes. So the viewer, you don't have to paint leaves. The viewer's going to look at this, and most paintings you're going to be looking at them from a distance, unless you're like me in the museum and I get right up close and get in trouble for getting too close. But as you back away, you're going to see these little blobs start to turn into what your eye thinks is leaves. So you don't have to spell everything out for everybody. I think it'll be nice to put some greenery down here too, instead of doing that brown dirt color, because that'll help to balance out what's going on up here. So I'm just going to take some of those darker greens again. Not the darkest, but just some dark midtones. I'm neutralizing the green so it's not so bright. And I'm just going to come in and around those little dappled highlights. And again, not covering every inch of the background, but just allowing my strokes to flow off the brush. And the more I move, the more it starts to blend with the background. So if I want it more green, I stop and clean the brush, reload, and come back in and we'll just lay those strokes back on. So I think that's nice. It's still kind of neutral, but you can tell maybe there is some grass there. It's just in shadow and it's not just dirt. Wasn't really crazy about just having dirt down there. Abigail's asking what paints I use. She loves the bright colors. The majority of the paints I'm using are Rembrandt. So most of my transparent colors, those colors I put on first, are Rembrandt translucents. I do have some Winsor & Newton, and they're all the artist grade paints. I don't use the student grade. Even though they're cheaper, the artist grade go a lot further, and if you're using the student grade, you're going to struggle with those. Those don't have the pigment that these professional colors have. So the pigment is less intense. There's a lot of fillers that are added in so they don't move as easily. So I would recommend getting those professional paints and just start building up your collection as you can afford it, because it makes a huge difference. And thank you guys for answering some of those questions that I missed along the way. Celeste was asking the size. So thank you, Donnie, for filling in for me. It's 16 by 16, in case you didn't see that. All right, I think I need to do a little bit more up here, and I'm going to go ahead and put my larger brush down. So as I start to get more of the surface covered, and I do realize that I don't have all my stone covered, but I'm just trying to move around even more so for you guys, because I know I'm not going to finish today, or at least I'm not going to finish in the allotted hour for Facebook Live, but I will work on it after the hour's up, and I will post the finished product. So I'm wanting to add in, I'm using some cad orange and kind of pulling that into my gray. with a really light opaque gray. And I don't want to cover all of that glow. I'm just going to come in and kind of carefully maneuver my way around, just so it still looks like stone, but it looks like lights coming in, because otherwise it kind of looks unfinished. Looking to see where else. I'm squinting, and I'm looking to see if there's another area of color that looks like that. So right in through here is similar, so we're just going to go with that. So right down along the bottom here of this stone that's kind of facing us. I went and covered up my little dappled light. I'll have to either pop that back in or just leave it. Let's see, so we're getting a little cooler as we come up here. So what I'm going to do is add some blues into that. And we're going to cool that gray down. I'm using this similar value, but we're just going a little cooler. Okay, so I'm going to overlap that just a bit and just start carrying that up. Okay, so this here is darker than this, so I'm going to go a little lighter here. So I'm adding in a little bit more of my light gray, and I'm going to pull some magenta into that, just so I can kind of change that color a little bit. I want this to be fairly crisp, right up against that corner. Okay, I'm going to pull in a little bit more blue into this. I want to darken that just a little bit more. You see how easy that is to do? So if your color's off a little bit, it's so easy to come in and fix it. And I'm just going to kind of pop that in, just allow that to kind of skip around a little bit. All right, we've got about 10 minutes. My friend Petra is on from Holland. I'm so happy you're here, Petra. Gosh, we go back a long ways. My dad was in the Air Force and we lived in Holland. And so we were kids, like 5th grade. And Petra's younger sister was my age, Laura. And then Petra is just close to our age. We won't talk about actual ages. All right, let's put in some highlights in some of these leaves because that's going to make a big difference. So I'm really bumping up my grains now, going with really, really bright, light green. This is not necessarily my lightest, but it's very, very yellowy because it's catching sunlight, and that's what we want. So I'm looking like right up in here. I'm kind of wanting to overlap some of the stone and some of these other leaves in here. This is going to kind of start directing your eye around the surface. So I'm doing a little on that side. Now I'm going to move over to the left side of the door. Just thinking about that light bouncing around in there. Now I'm going to go even lighter. All right, so looking to see pops of those brightest highlights. Thinking about that light, streaming in down here from the top right side going to the left, popping in little hints of little leaves on top of the stone. I don't want to get too carried away with the highlight. I need to brighten up those flowers as well. So I'm running out of time. We'll get to that. Let me put a little more highlighting in on this side, especially along the top of the wall here. So the vine is kind of growing up over the top of the wall, and it's catching lots of light. Little sparkles of light. Got to get that stony color in there too. Okay, catching a little light on tops of some of these leaves. All right, what's most important that I want to do here before we check out? Just looking around, we can go ahead and put these latches in. That'll be kind of fun. So it's kind of rusty. I'm just going to take my dry brush and fix that line there. It was just a clean brush and I kind of just took the color off of it. So I'm going to pop in a much lighter and a little bit warmer kind of teal color that goes with the door, but I don't want to cover everything, and I want to keep in mind that the shadow, we've got kind of a shadow, so the light starts here and then it gets darker towards this side. So I'm not going to put a lot of detail here. I've already got some darks that is kind of supporting this color. So that's all I'm going to do with that. I might go in and pop in those little knobs because that's kind of fun. Yeah, I'm just going to use the same brush. I'm going to clean it out, make sure it's clean and dry, and I'm going to get a nice dark transparent color. So a good dark color I like to use sometimes is my transparent oxide orange and my Winsor violet. It gives me a nice dark. And then I can come in with the corner of the brush and just pop in little knobs, those little brads. All right, so all in through here, we'll put in more stonework. I want to, let's see, let's go ahead and finish this real quick. So that's going to cool down. So I'm going to use kind of a blue-green, just darker value. And it's also kind of rusty looking. So let me do that. And then I want to put in a little bit of rust. So I'm going to mix up a nice rusty color. And we're just going to pop that in right over the top. And I kind of lost that. So one cool thing, I've got this little tool and it's got a rubber end on both sides. It's got a point and a wedge. So I can come in and I can fix whatever detailing I might have lost. And if I wanted to scrape out a color, hey, I use the wedge side and I can just kind of scrape that out. So it probably wasn't really necessary for me to scrape that. I could have gone in and just put the color back in. But just for demonstration purposes, you might find that helpful. I got that at either Jerry's Artorama or Dick Blick. It's called a Kemper Wipeout tool. I'll just put that right back in. And I'm going to pull this light kind of over the top just to soften that just a little bit so it's not such a harsh change. Okay, we'll do this something similar down here, but I'm going to go ahead and move to another area since we are just about out of time. I've got about 4 minutes. So I want to put in a little bit more warmth in my flowers. And I also want to pop in little splashes of color. I like to do that in the end because it just adds so much interest And it also kind of creates just a nice playfulness and a sense of movement. So I can take that, one of those pink colors, and come in and just pop that in to kind of pull that composition, the directional line that we have going on here into the door. And I'm just going to mix up some different shades of purples and pinks. Put in a little bit of value in some of these flowers, some shadowing. Kind of breaking that up a little bit. And again, I still have to do all this stonework, so I don't want to get too carried away on the flowers quite yet. But one thing that helps, whenever you've got pinks, if you'll go back in and just add little hints of oranges, it just warms it up and it's just so nice for the composition. So I would suggest doing that, because pinks and oranges look so nice together. All right, so I still have quite a bit that I need to do to this. So I'm going to sign off here in just a minute and work on it some more, and then I'll post it on my Facebook page so you guys can come back and check it out. Again, if you're interested in my online courses, you can check it out, get the first month free, Unlocking Color Secrets. Just go to my website, chrisbrandley.com, and you will find it there. So thank you guys so much for being here. Yes, Abigail, I do sign my name with the little Kemper tool with the pointed end when I'm finished. You're welcome, Donnie. So glad you were here. Ingeborg is here too. She's another sister of Petra. So glad you guys are here. Ruth, good to see you. You are so welcome. Love seeing you guys here. So anyway, hope y'all have an enjoyable rest of your day, and that if you're having some stormy weather, that you're safe. And I will sign off and hope to see you next time. Thank you guys so much.